I guess if we were talking super soft in this context, you'd be looking at a qualifying tyre, which is something that we've said we would give to the sport if they asked for it.
And it's a big point anyway.
It's a big point anyway, and that's something that at the moment is not being asked in fairness, but we would provide it. And probably there you'd want to go with the purple, like you do on the when you do the best time. That would be the best colour. As for the hard tyres, well, as was mentioned earlier on in the presentations, we probably, when we started in Formula 1, were a little bit conservative in some cases, and we had tyres already this year. This year we had some races, particularly at the end, where we could have done, Austin, we could have done 4 races on one set of tyres. So, when people said we can't make tyres, that was by error. We didn't mean to go like that. We were just trying to be conservative in a new track. So, I don't foresee us doing, hard tyres. At the end of the day, the difference between doing what we're doing with 2, maybe 3 pit stops per race, which is 100 kilometres, 120 kilometres per change, and a set of tyres that last the whole weekend, 300, is 300 kilometres. And to be honest, that's not what we're being asked. They want to see the movement. There's no fuel stops anymore, of course. So if we didn't have tyre changes, they'd leave and you wouldn't see them again. And we've seen in some races, it brings into play actually the teamwork of the teams. You see some teams either becoming very good at their pit stops and some making some errors and maybe changing position. So it adds variety to the sport.
With this poll, you also answered to the question from Greg, who wrote, did the teams really get on top of their 2012 tyres, or were the compound choices for the end of the season just more conservative? You have just answered.
Yeah, I mean, the conservative side comes a little bit from our choice, but also, by and large, by the teams really mastering the car. When they lost the blown diffusers, they learned very quickly. And you saw at the start of the season, John was talking to me about some drivers weaving down the straight, trying to get temperature in the front tyres. That was really due to the misbalance really between the front and rear axes of the car, and having a misbalance in temperatures, which meant the tyres performed differently. If you've got 20 degrees temperature between front and rear, you have a different type of handling. So that's at the end of the season had changed, and they were consuming the tyres almost not at all, almost no degradation.
To your feeling, Paul, will the team be as quick this year in learning the situation, or maybe this new characteristic will make their life a little bit harder?
Well, the rules haven't changed. The car hasn't changed dramatically. They're all looking, I think, at 2014 when there's going to be massive changes to the car. If anything, the car is quite consolidated based on what they used last season, so it'll be evolution rather than revolution. From that point of view, they'll dominate the car much easier, which means, of course, they can maximise the tyre performance much easier.
You agree with that, Jean?
Of course.
One more question is coming from Charlie. The question is that if the FIA grant you the contract to supply tyres in the 2014 season and beyond, will you be pushing to change their size, width and diameter? Charlotte is asking that. It is, once again, one point quite important for Pirelli.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 levels here, I think. There's one which is, look at the sidewall, that's our advertising space. If you have a little sidewall, you won't see the brand. But from a technical point of view, of course, it's feasible. It's feasible, and we could easily make 18-inch tyres to go into Formula 1. The teams aren't asking for it, I have to say. It also changes dramatically what happens with the suspension, braking. So it's something that, if we were asked to do, we could do. The sport would probably need a 2-year lead time for it to happen, because it needs to be done well. It's also part of the look of the cars. I don't know if any of you have seen last year there was an Audi running at Le Mans with 18-inch tyres, and the front nose cone had come off, and it had the tyre showing for once, which you don't normally get on an LMP1 car, and it looked like a cartoon car. And a lot of people were saying, if that was what a Formula 1 car would look like, then it would look very strange. So if the sport asks for it, we're always available and willing to do it. We can do it. We make a lot of 18-inch, 19-inch tyres for circuit racing, and we could do it. But there's, I think, a lot of detailed discussions to have with the sport before that happens.
So questions open to the floor now, please. Here in 3rd row, if you can have a microphone.
Degradation tyres, and obviously fans enjoy the entertainment and all the rest of it, but will the drivers be able to push flat out on the tyre? I think there was a lot of fans last year were concerned that it seemed as though it was more of a conservation exercise than seeing the best drivers in the world absolutely flat out.
Yeah, there's a number of ways of looking at it. Obviously, you drive to the maximum performance of the package. That's true of every level of motorsport. And Historically, that might have been brakes as well, might have been engines, tyres, etc. So you have to say that the drivers will always be in command of the steering wheel, the brake and the accelerator. So a lot of that aspect is in the hands of still the driver. And you saw a number of occasions, certainly early on when we were in the sport, certain drivers were coming to the fore because they were able to use the performance package easier than others. I mean, it changed. I mean, they are the world's best drivers. So as we went on over the 2 years, you've seen even drivers who were, let's say, historically renowned as maybe being the aggressive ones. You know, Lewis Hamilton's probably one that people were all pointing out when we came to the sport would suffer. But at the end of the first few races, he clearly dominated what he needed to do to get the maximum performance out of the tyres. So yes, I mean, it will have an aspect. The drivers will have to think about it, but it's something that they're also in control of. So it's in their hands.
More questions from the floor, also on bikes, racing possibly? One here.
Paul, who will be the driver or drivers, and which will be the car for the development of the tyres this season?
Yeah, I read on Twitter last night Kobayashi was going to be unveiled today, but he's not going to be. He's not going to be. No.
It's a joke.
No, it is a joke. I wanted Takanui, but they've said that he probably won't be able to do it. No, I mean the drivers will. There's no reason to change. We've had a great time with Lucas and Jaime. They've done a great job. We need to renew a contract first before we go testing anymore, and that's one aspect. And we would still use the 2010 car because there's no point in having this year's or last year's car because 2014 is so different. So if we did use that car, we'll be looking more at compounds, and I think 2014 will really be characterised by use of the simulator more than actually on-track testing. We've worked extensively, as you've heard from the presentations, on tyre modelling. We now have a very high-level model capability to give to the teams for their simulators, and that's how you would develop for 2014. You would do it by modelling, by and large, because the changes are so great for the cars, we can't have a representative car.
There was one more question here.
Paul, last season we had that unprecedented 7 different winners in the first 7 races. You've gone aggressive with the tyres to try and spice things up at the start of this season. You're expecting a repeat this time around, or what sort of racing will we see in that first half of the season?
Well, I think it'd be wishful thinking. I think we can beat 7. I know last night at dinner you were suggesting you could really do with 20, but I mean, that's not going to happen. You know, it's a strange season, I think, this season, because if you talk to the teams, some of them are clearly already thinking heavily for 2014 because they've got huge investment to make to get the new cars ready, engines as well, of course. I think it's going to be a case of the first few races will determine the efforts and level of development you're going to see from all teams. I think if 3 or 4 of them feel they're in with a shout, they'll carry on developing. If at any stage they think they've got no hope of the championship, much earlier than last year, they will start falling away to put resources into what's going to be a very expensive change for them for 2014. Having said that, we are changing the tyres substantially. It still will be a challenge for them to maximise performance, and we have to hope, particularly at the start of the season where there are a few more unknowns. The tracks are a little bit more aggressive themselves, and then we also have some unpredictable weather. Places like Malaysia always provide a strange race. So I think we'll have to expect some interesting racing. And we'll have question marks, of course, of what's going to happen with Mercedes. Will they catch up this year and be competitive like they threatened to do at the start of last year? And that will determine, 7 winners. No, I can't really see that. No. Or if I could, I'd put money on it because.
I think we are at the end now, but I would have a question for Giorgio Barbier regarding Superbike. Giorgio, the 17-inch new tyre will push riders, will impose riders to change, let's say, heavily something in their riding style.
Well, really, if you think the bikes are really derivated from the series one, actually 17-inch might just help the balance of the bike as bike comes from the manufacturer. So we expect just some advantage, and we already got some feedback of advantages in terms of the usual problem you got on the bike in the first setup. So that means the chatter or little small problems. But for sure, we'll improve a few characteristics in terms of riding style. So to go faster into the corner, the keeping the right line into the corner. So all these features will be improved, and I expect this is the most important point for the season.
I think we are at the end, correct, Francesco? There is a lunch waiting for us in the Coca Mansion here in the park. There is the press office open for who of yours have to work immediately. The interview corners will be ready very shortly. So, what more to say, Paul, George, Jean, George again? What more to say? Happy New Season.
Happy New Season, and I hope you know, for all the activities we're involved in, we can provide as much excitement and fun and entertainment for our fans all over the world as we've done over the last couple of seasons.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all.